Patch 6.2 was released this Tuesday, the 23rd of June, 2015, and after spending a full day in Tanaan jungle, I quickly came to the conclusion that I hated it. I wrote up a video script that was basically nothing more than seething anger and venom, and I even went so far as to record it. But then I decided to scrap that work entirely. I thought it would better serve my channel if I took a more constructive approach to shitting on the new content. I want to dissect it piece by piece and discuss why I think it's a failure. I also want to point out how I would have handled things differently if I were in charge. Of course, most of my suggestions to improve Tanaan are coming at a time when it's far too late to fix things. The jungle is what it is, and we're not going to see any major overhauls. But perhaps going forward, Blizzard might find a way to use my video as a reference tool, should they ever stumble upon them on YouTube. Regardless, though, my biggest goal here is just to document my first impressions of our new map. I'm going to approach this by making a series of short videos where I can focus on one topic per video. And there's no rush to complete this project, right? I mean, after all, we're going to be stuck in Tanaan for a long, long time. So sit back, relax, grind away your millions of mobs while I occasionally upload a video to cry about how my beloved game currently sucks. To begin the invasion of Tanaan jungle, we first need to build a shipyard. The quest chain that rewards this function is so short and basic it might as well not even exist. I think the flight time to your objective and back takes longer than completing the actual objective itself. Once our shipyard is operational, we're asked to maintain it by playing a slightly modified version of the Garrison Facebook game. I'm a big-time achievement hunter, and even I'm having trouble finding the motivation to do this. It's just not appealing to me whatsoever. I'm totally burnt out on frivolous repetition. But thankfully, the ship missions themselves aren't mandatory content, so I'm able to skip them and concentrate my efforts on more important matters, like invading Tanaan. Khadgar does his best to make this invasion sound like an epic endeavor, but it's not. The one time you get to ride a ship from your own shipyard is nothing more than a pathetic loading screen. Khadgar could have just teleported us to the new map and it would have been the exact same experience. Our fancy new ship plays no part in the invasion, and we're not traveling with a group of soldiers. We're flying solo on this adventure, but I suppose none of that matters anyway because the shores of Tanaan aren't even defended by the Iron Horde. This place is more vacant than the development team offices at Blizzard Entertainment. So if I were in charge of designing Tanaan, the first thing I would have done is make our arrival more memorable. Have our ships blasted to pieces before we even reach the dock. Make us swim to the shore while trying to avoid a hail of bullets and cannonballs. Once we set our feet on the ground, we realize our nightmare has only just begun. The shores would be fortified with mines and other obstacles, the same hellish technology Garrosh was planning to devastate all of Azeroth with. This D-Day should have been amazing. Instead, we're just tasked with casually strolling down an empty road. The invasion of Tanaan! Even the biggest Blizzard apologists are going to have trouble defending how lackluster it was. Unfortunately, it sets a precedent on how lame the rest of the map truly is. The construction of Volmar, the New World boss, the Saber Stalkers. There are plenty more disappointing things for me to whine about. And some of you say whining's what I do best. So stay tuned for those rants in future videos. Thanks for watching. Later. I don't think there's any replay value in Tanaan Jungle. My druid main is going through the motions, mainly to unlock flight. But I can't see myself dragging any alts through this map. I'm not running multiple shipyards, so my alts have no need to gather oil or hunt for blueprints. And if I want to gear up alts beyond what they're already wearing, there are much better ways to go about it. I have zero interest in trying to upgrade baleful gear tokens at 20,000 APEXIS crystals a pop. However, for the sake of this video, I decided to drag my Alliance Paladin into Tanaan, just to see if building Lion's Watch was any different from building Volmar. Big surprise, it wasn't. The creation of both these hubs was just as dull and insignificant as our initial invasion. I'll take you through the process, step by step, from an Alliance perspective. Upon landing in Tanaan, Yrel says, "Our landing was unopposed. Why are these docks all but abandoned?" That's a really good question. Then Yrel asks you to find any information on the forces deployed in the area. Once this task is accomplished, you meet with Exarch Niall, who's hiding near a fortified choke point, your first real glimpse of the Iron Horde. Niall says, Gul'dan seems to have concentrated his defenses on this choke point. The guns, that's plural, more than one, the guns up ahead are unlike anything we've ever seen before. They're empowered with Fel energy. Right away I'm calling bullshit on this quest. We've seen these guns everywhere. They're scattered all over Draenor, and they're shooting regular rounds like they do on other maps. The fire hasn't even been recolored to green or anything. There is one individual gun that's bigger than the rest, but I'll get to that in just a second. Niall goes on to say, "Our enemies think this pass is impregnable. Let's prove them wrong, Commander. If we can break through, the terrain ahead will make an excellent stronghold. Destroy that cannon." Okay, so now only the big gun is an issue. The other ones are unimportant, but the big one, we've got to get rid of that thing pronto. So I made a mad dash toward my objective. I had to kill 4, maybe 5 orcs to get there. And then I clicked on the big gun and boom, the whole thing exploded. How exciting. Shouldn't we be asked to clear out the entire choke point? It's still actively defended by several deadly guns, unlike anything we've ever seen before. Whatever. You then meet Niall on the opposite side of this choke point. She says, "While you were playing with Fellfire, I located the perfect position for an assault outpost. Follow me and we can get this base started." Okay, 2 things, Niall. First, you can't claim to have found the perfect spot for a base when you've only spent 2 minutes surveying a tiny portion of the Tanaan landscape. And second, how are we building a base to begin with? I'm traveling with Niall and Yrel, only 2 people, and even if they possess the knowledge to build an outpost, they don't have the tools or materials to do so. I know World of Warcraft is a video game, and not everything is going to be realistic. But I'm not exactly bitching about this issue from a realism perspective. I'm mainly upset because this setup was the perfect opportunity for Blizzard to introduce some fun gameplay, if they had the motivation to do so. Blizzard just handed us a base. It just appeared out of thin air. Why? I guess because it was the cheapest and easiest way to throw players straight into their soul-crushing APEXIS daily grinds. We should have had to work for a base. Maybe clear that choke point so civilians, engineers, and construction workers could make their way through. After all, the choke point lies directly in between the docks and our chosen base camp location. Do we need lumber to build walls? Well, we're in a jungle. Give us control of shredders to cut down trees, or maybe have us protect the shredders from enemies until certain amounts of resources are gathered. There are countless creative ways to make establishing a base of operations seem like a monumental and overall rewarding task. Blizzard didn't even attempt to make this process worthwhile, and they had months and months to do it. Tanaan Jungle was delayed from the initial launch of Warlords by 222 days. That's over half a year. Honestly, what the hell is going on? I think now's a good time to dust off this old gem. The World of Warcraft team is 50% larger today than it was when we shipped Mists of Pandaria. We're already working on the next expansion. We already have ideas for the expansion after that. We've never been larger. We've never been more forward-thinking about the types of things we can do with World of Warcraft. Oh boy. You know what's 50% larger today than it was yesterday? My disappointment in Blizzard Entertainment. I'm already working on my next complaint video, and I have ideas for more complaint videos after that. Ugh, it's gonna be a long, hard road out of Tanaan. Maybe it's a good thing we didn't have Fairlawn in this expansion. Probably just would have sullied my memories of Netherstorm. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon in part 3. Later. The Saberstalkers faction is without question the worst reputation in all of Warlords, and perhaps even lands within the top 5 worst reputations of all time. This is a bold statement, I know, but I'm not just saying it to be outrageous. I honestly believe it. The Brood of Nozdormu probably takes the coveted number 1 spot, followed closely by the Chendralar, a faction so bad it no longer exists in-game. Then you have the Hydraxian Waterlords at number 3, maybe the pre-Cataclysm Winter Saber Trainers at number 4, and finally, the Saberstalkers at number 5. Honorable mentions go to Timbermaw Hold and the Thorium Brotherhood. Notice the funny thing about this top 5 list, even when it's extended to 7? They're all vanilla reps, except for the Saberstalkers. You have to go 10 years back in time to rival the ridiculousness of our latest faction. As I highlighted in parts 1 and 2 of this episode, when I first set foot in Tanaan Jungle, I was pretty bummed about how underwhelming the whole place was. It seemed really cheap and uninspired to me, but maybe my expectations were too high. I had to wait 7.5 months to see it, so naturally I jumped to the conclusion that it was gonna be awesome. But maybe I'm to blame for having such high hopes. Anyway, I knew, to some extent, how awful grinding the Saberstalker rep was going to be, and I figured, Let me just get it out of the way, right off the bat. I'll tackle the worst aspect of this map, and then I can try and focus on some fun. So Tuesday, my first day in Tanaan, I made it my goal to reach Exalted with the Saber Stalkers. I know you only need to reach Revered for flight purposes, but I'm a completionist, so I wanted to go all the way. And I can laugh at this now, but at the end of my grind, once I reached my goal, I was so furious I had to turn off the game. I'll tell you why in just a bit, but first, let me share my experience from the beginning. Just south of Lion's Watch is a small chunk of land that's isolated within a tall mountain range. It's called Fangri-La, and it's home to a tribe of Sabron known as the Black Fang. The official Warcraft website describes the Sabron as more advanced than beasts. They have a social structure and can shape simple tools into weapons. They're primitive, sure, but they're more people than animal. They wear clothing, they can speak. Hell, you can recruit one as a follower for your garrison. So what are we asked to do when we see them in Tanaan? Just kill them. Kill them all. Why? Well, that's the best part. For no reason whatsoever. Now, for the record, I'm not a role player. I don't pretend my characters are the paragons of good and righteousness, and I'm not some ultra-liberal douche who doesn't like killing things in video games. I'm upset that there's no significance behind this outright slaughter, gameplay or otherwise. The Saber Stalkers have zero motivation for killing the Sabron. They're an ill-conceived and uninspired faction that was just carelessly dumped into the game, simply for the sake of being a massive time sink. Grinding mobs for the sake of grinding isn't fun. There's no appealing entertainment here. You're just burning down NPCs for points. This is essentially as lazy as game development gets. It doesn't get much worse than this. Let's take a look at the Saber Stalkers camp. I was able to capture the whole thing in a single screenshot. It's just 4 NPCs hanging around a campfire, and I'm not even certain they're all Saber Stalkers. This guy, Scholar, with the moose antler hat, he's just sitting here with the squirrels. If you talk to him, he gives you a free bag of squirrel treats. I've got no beef with him. Then you've got 2 other NPCs that don't even have any dialogue boxes. Datira the Cunning is decked out in a full Sabron skin suit, so I'm guessing she's right where she belongs. A full card-carrying member of the Kill Cat clan. And Caladiel looks like a normal Blood Elf hunter. There's a possibility she might just be a wary traveler who's resting by the fire to try and stay warm. Stenga the Walker, on the other hand, he's the quartermaster, the man in charge, der Führer himself. I would make a stupid joke about how he's the writer of Meow Kampf, but that would be backstory, and this faction deserves no such credit. Stenga has only 3 dialogue boxes. The first tells you you're in Fangri-La, home of the powerful Black Fang Sabron tribe. Stenga says, "You bring back the claws and maybe I have some things for you." Okay. The second box tells you, "Go kill some of them cats. Make sure you bring friends, them kitties be no joke." And the third and final dialogue box says, "Them fancy catmen gotta be shown who is the boss around these parts. Kill all the champions, and you will earn the respect of all the creatures in the jungle." So the Black Fang Sabron committed no crimes. They're not attacking us. We're intruding upon them. Wait a minute. Is this the invasion of Tanaan we were promised? Nah, that would be stupid. Fangri-La offers 0 strategic value of any kind. There's nothing here that either the Horde or the Alliance could possibly want. We're murdering the Sabron because we can. To earn the respect, man. There aren't any resources here. This feudal bloodshed is a deterrent from the real threat, Gul'dan's Iron Horde. The Sabron don't even drop APEXIS crystals, just claws and fur. I can't stress enough how fucking pointless this is. So now I'd be a fool not to play that clip of Ian Hazakostas in the Q&A bad-mouthing the reps from Warlords 6.0.
Yeah, the reputations in 6.0 release Warlords of Draenor, I'm not really going to defend them and say that they're awesome and fun and engaging. They are completely mob grinds. I think it's unfortunate that it kind of set the perception of reputations as a whole back many years. Yeah. You know, we have come a long way since the days of, you know, grinding furbolgs in, you know, exactly in Winter Spring or whatnot.
Ian admits these type of grinds suck. And yet the Saber Stalkers were put into the game for what purpose exactly? Some of you White Knights might be saying,
Well, when Blizzard got negative feedback about Warlords rep in 6.0, they were already in the process of designing the Saberstalkers, so it was far too late to change them or remove them from the game.
Well, you know what? That's bullshit. I think I've done a fairly good job of pointing out how the Saberstalkers were crapped out with zero effort. The entire concept, from storyboarding to actual development, probably took less than a week. Seriously, there's nothing here. It's embarrassing, actually. And I'm not really advocating the removal of content. I want this shit fleshed out. 7.5 months of development time was more than enough to adequately create a proper faction. But Blizzard chose not to bother. And let's look at it from this goofy perspective. Let's say Blizzard was pressed for time. Like the Saberstalkers could have been good if Blizzard had maybe 7 or 8 additional months to fully develop them. Well, fine. Sometimes the best laid plans go awry. In this goofy scenario, we'll just chalk it up to failure. At the end of the day, nothing's changed. What was launched was pure garbage. So, if Ian can't defend this type of nonsense, how can Blizzard defend locking Flight behind it? The Saberstalkers should not be part of the meta achievement at the very least. Anyway, this is going on long enough, so I'll just finish my original story and call it a day. Before I started grinding reputation with the Saberstalkers, I didn't know much about them. I used the group finder tool to quickly jump into a 5-man group, and we just murdered innocent Saberon for hours. Once I hit Exalted, I was shocked to learn that feat doesn't come with an achievement. Way to add insult to injury, Blizzard. Even the shitty reps in 6.0 came with achievements and titles. Just when I think you can't sink any lower, you find a new way to amaze me. The second I hit Exalted, I said goodbye to my group and raced to Zenga the Quartermaster. I was ready to buy my well-earned rewards and never set foot in Fangri-La again. Only I couldn't, because this racist prick doesn't sell much of anything for gold. This lunatic only wants Saberon claws. Lots and lots of claws. He sells a wild Gortusk mount for 1,000 claws, a Savage Cub battle pet for 1,500 claws, and a Bristling Hellboar mount for 5,000 claws. Do you know how much I earned while grinding from 0 to Exalted? A measly 645 claws. Blizzard priced this stuff like they expected players to get some enjoyment out of the place. I was so pissed I just logged out and went to bed. Stenga can keep all his mounts and his pets. I'm through dealing with him. Stupid, intolerant, xenophobic monster. And by the way, just so I don't get a ton of hate mail about it, I'm sure some of you would like to point out that I'm a racist as well. After all, I did make a whole video about how I don't like the Pandaren. Only I'll counter your comparison with this. I'm not insane. While I may not like the Pandaren, I never once tried to organize my own little half-assed mini-faction to promote their all-out genocide. And even if I did, I'd like to think my reward to panda pelt ratio would be much more reasonable. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon in part 4. Later. Today I want to talk about hunting rares in Tanaan, but before I dive into that, I want to briefly address Corey Stockton's interview with Mammy Twink that was released late last week. In case you missed it, I highly recommend you check it out. It's 34 minutes of pure stupidity, and ultimately, the last insult I could stomach from Blizzard Entertainment. A few days later, after having some time to fully absorb Corey's interview, I decided to cancel my WoW subscription. My game time officially expires on July 24th. If you're unaware, Corey Stockton has been WoW's lead content designer since Cataclysm. WoW Wiki says he's responsible for overseeing the design and implementation of all exterior zones. That's one of the few positive things people have given WoD credit for. The maps look absolutely beautiful. Let's look at the rest of Corey's responsibilities. He oversees dungeon designs, which we all know have been steadily shrinking in number since Wrath. He works on battlegrounds and arenas, which we didn't get any of in Warlords. He works on city designs, or so he claims. Some of Azeroth's capital cities were turned into fully fleshed out 3D models in Kata, but they weren't drastically redesigned. Mop gave us tiny carbon copy shrines to call home, and Warlords gave us our pathetic Ashran campgrounds. At this rate, I don't expect capital cities to even exist in the next expansion. Way to slowly phase out an integral part of the game, man. Corey also worked on the guild leveling system, which was later removed from the game because it was a total failure. He was heavily involved in garrisons, which he strangely promotes with a sense of pride for some reason, even after all we've experienced. And he's also a big champion of the shipyards, which are an absolute joke. I'll give him some credit for managing the pet battle system well, but honestly, that's a side game that shouldn't be one of his biggest and best accomplishments. Overall, I'd say WoW's lead content designer is doing a fairly shit job of maintaining Warcraft's longevity. Anyway, what really set me off about Corey's interview was the official acknowledgement that 6.2 would be the final patch for Warlords of Draenor. He said it in a real wish-washy way, but it confirmed what I've been dreading for months now, that WoW's expansions are being fast-tracked with less content per pack in order to milk the player base for more money. It's a crooked cash grab, plain and simple. There's not enough value to justify the cost in my opinion, so I'm no longer interested in playing World of Warcraft. Meanwhile, Corey Stockton is a clueless dimwit, and I'm not just saying that to be mean. Let me prove it to you with a quick little history lesson. Ian Hazzikostas gave an interview with Polygon, a third-party website that was released on May 22nd, 2015, the Friday just before an extended Memorial Day weekend. In that interview, Ian said there wouldn't be any flight in WoD or future expansions. This announcement was big news and caused a huge uproar within the Warcraft community. And of course, no Blizzard employees were immediately available to address player concerns because they were all on vacation. Corey Stockton gave an interview with MammyTwink, a third-party website, that was released on July 2nd, 2015, Thursday just before an extended 4th of July weekend. In that interview, Corey confirmed the big news that 6.2 would be the final patch for WoD. Do you see where I'm going with this? It had the same destructive results within the WoW community. Corey stupidly made the exact same mistake Ian did. At least Ian had the foresight to fix his mistake by organizing a Q&A. Corey just shut his trap and pretended the shit didn't happen. Also, let's not forget that Ian publicly admitted that 6.1 wasn't a proper patch, yet lead content designer Corey Stockton claims it was. Is Corey so out of touch that he doesn't even pay attention to what his colleagues are saying? How can you be so fucking oblivious and still keep your job? With his head in the sand, it's no wonder Warlords suck so hard. One good thing came from the MammyTwink interview, though, and that's an explanation as to why hunting rares doesn't exactly work in Tanaan, which is a perfect segue to help us dive into the actual subject I wanted to talk about today. First, you have a bunch of rares in Tanaan, but most of them are garbage. Only a small handful are worth going out of your way to kill more than once. Doomroller, Terror Fist, Vengeance, and Death Talon. These rares have a slim chance to drop a Medallion of the Legion or a Rattling Iron Cage. The Medallion increases your reputation with all Draenor factions by 1,000 points. This is quite helpful since grinding rep the original way is a black hole of boredom. And the Rattling Cage contains mounts, which aren't special in the slightest, but hey, even shitty recolors help increase your collection numbers. At least there are various achievements and rewards linked to that activity. But here's one of the biggest problems I didn't understand at first. I could be right next to a spawn point, hear the spawn announcement, but not even see the rare pop. I'd also see other people talking in general chat saying stuff like Doomroller's up, but nothing was there. I just assumed they were trolling, only it turns out there's a ton of phasing in Tanaan Jungle. When I first heard about this phasing, I didn't believe it. After all, there are no fucking quests in Tanaan, no map-altering progression, so how or why would the jungle be phased? Well, Corey explained it best in his interview. He said Blizzard is running multiple versions of Tanaan Jungle all at once, and different players are actively seeing different phases because they're on different shards. Yet the rare spawn alerts are spreading across all shards at all times. The division of players into shards was intended to reduce stress on the servers, so the servers don't overheat and explode. In the future, this problem should simply work itself out. The number of necessary shards will reduce as active subscription numbers drop to 0. Of course, Blizzard released Tanaan in its current broken, buggy form because they were competing with the launch date of Final Fantasy XIV's Heaven's Ward. I said it before, and I'll say it again. If Blizzard would focus on producing quality content, it wouldn't be necessary for them to attack the gaming market so aggressively. Stop concentrating on underhanded marketing tactics and design a game people actually want to play. The audience will gravitate toward you if you give them a good reason to. So when I do happen to see one of these 4 coveted rares in Tanaan, I run into a whole other problem. Toxic player interaction. Overall, the system creates a really negative environment, and it turns players against one another. You'll see this nonsense play out in general chat every day. Please don't attack that rare yet, I'm almost there. Blame player X if you can't get here in time. He's the stupid asshole who pulled the rare. Hey, fuck you, man.
Don't get mad at me for playing the fucking game. Stop DPSing so fast, you dicks. Give other players a chance to get here. The bickering is out of control, and the game suffers for it. If I DPS too fast, I'm a jerk. If I only tag the target once and then sit by the sidelines, I'm not having any fun. And I'm also not helping to take down the rare, so I look like a lazy sponge. I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. And if you try to bypass the randomness and form a proper group with the looking for group tool, you've got to spam the shit out of that system, because those groups are formed and filled in less than 10 seconds. The system doesn't work well with what we're being asked to do here. The Timeless Isle barely worked in this regard, and it was much, much smaller, so it was easier to get around quicker. Again, I'm not sure why Blizzard didn't learn anything from past experience. If I was in charge, this is how I would have designed rare hunting in Tanaan. When you arrive in Volmar, you're told about all the important rares in the jungle. For example, one of the soldiers can say, "Intelligence reports tell us the Iron Horde is crafting a devastating new class of tank known as a Doom Roller. They're building these vehicles within Hellfire Citadel. We need to destroy these machines as soon as they exit the building. Otherwise, they could cause great devastation to our base of operations here at Volmar." Then, a military engineer can tell you about his latest invention, a zone-wide radio alert system. In a series of quests, you have to erect 4 radio towers across Tanaan Jungle. Once these towers are built, you'll receive a buff that lets you know your radio is working. The radio can then alert players to suspicious activities at the front gates of the Citadel. That's your warning to haul ass to Doomroller's spawn point, because the enemy is spawning in 60 seconds. With enough advanced warning, players would have only themselves to blame for not being able to reach the rare spawn points in time. And players engaged in battles wouldn't feel the need to hold back. They could enjoy the fights to their fullest potential, 100% guilt-free. Blizzard could also have the Iron Horde regularly attack our radio towers, creating zone-wide events where players need to band together in order to keep their radios functional. Changes like this would promote cooperation, and providing activities of this nature would actually help strengthen community bonds. It would make the world feel alive, and dare I say, savage? The notorious buzzword of this entire expansion. J. Allen Brack once said the WoW team has never been more forward-thinking about the types of things they can do with World of Warcraft. I stupidly assumed that meant innovation was on the horizon. I guess creativity peaked in patch 5.4 with the release of Timeless Isle, because aside from APEXIS daily grinds, that's all Tanaan Jungle is, hunting rares on Timeless Isle 2.0. It's bigger, but not better. I guess from September 10th, 2013 to now wasn't enough time for Blizzard to craft any solid new content. Perhaps I wouldn't be so critical, though, if I wasn't overhyped by the company itself. They should probably stop trying to sell players on ideas they either can't or won't deliver. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Because my account expires on the 24th of this month, I think I'm going to cut my Tanaan Jungle review a bit shorter than I originally planned. I was going to talk about the world boss, flight paths, and so on, but I'll end things in part 5 with my thoughts on APEXIS dailies and why they don't work. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Later. My WoW sub's on the verge of expiration. By the time I'm finished making this video, it'll be gone for good. But as of this moment, I've got 15 hours to go. That's 15 hours to complete my long, drawn-out review of Tanaan Jungle. Man, I can't wait to leave this wretched green nightmare and never return. Let's take a quick look at Warlords 6.0. When the expansion was released, I spoke quite highly of it. The initial questing was excellent, because it was actual content. Sadly, I had no idea it marked the beginning of the end. It wouldn't be long before I grew to despise Blizzard Entertainment. After hitting level cap on several different characters, I started to realize that there wasn't much else to do in the open world of Draenor. The normal dailies I had grown accustomed to since BC were basically purged from the game. Players were given APEXIS daily grinds instead. This change was undoubtedly one of the biggest missteps of the entire expansion. If I were in charge of Blizzard, I would have tested players' reactions to APEXIS dailies, and offered them alongside normal dailies. That way, if APEXIS dailies failed, like they did, players could ignore them and still have an alternate form of endgame content to occupy their time with. Instead, Blizzard stupidly put all their eggs in one basket, and unfortunately for them, that basket was a cheap mesh of poorly woven garbage. The eggs broke, resulting in a substantial majority of players complaining about APEXIS dailies both early and often. I've got to point out the only mild entertainment I ever had with the 6.0 APEXIS dailies was when I'd complete them in a giant raid group.
I'd fly to the pit of Gorgrond, use the LFG tool to find a raid, and just wash over the Iron Horde in a massive army of players. Of course, it wasn't long before Blizzard removed our ability to do this from the game because the tired old adage is true. Blizzard hates fun. So anyway, 7.5 months later, after all the negative feedback, Blizzard released patch 6.2, and it's essentially nothing but more APEXIS daily grinds. Now, I understand that Tanaan Jungle was already in development by the time Blizzard started receiving said feedback, and it was far too late to drastically change directions. 6.2 was screwed on this account no matter which way you slice it. But there was a good way to handle the situation, and a bad way. Blizzard chose the bad way. Again, I would have diversified, added some proper dailies to Tanaan, in addition to the ill-fated APEXIS grinds, and I would have made damn sure those dailies were fun. I'll share my suggestions on how a bit later on in this video, but Blizzard decided to keep APEXIS dailies the fundamental source of endgame content, adjusting only the reward system. Blizzard said, okay, we know what you guys think of APEXIS dailies. We're not going to bother changing the gameplay in any way, shape, or form, but we're going to throw more rewards behind the activity. We're going to make you feel totally obligated to do something you absolutely hate. Problem solved. Now give us your money, you brainless twits. You know what's the most disturbing part of this change? Some players fell for it. APEXIS dailies are every bit as dull and punishing as they used to be, yet I heard a lot of people defending them on the forums and so on. These new APEXIS grinds are so much better than before. I'm really enjoying my time in Tanaan. This totally puts the 6.0 daily grinds to shame. No, shut up, enough already. Don't encourage Blizzard. They failed. Again. 6.0, 6.2, they're exactly the same. Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. The APEXIS bar itself was changed. Oh boy, check out those sweet new graphics. Dear God, it's beautiful. Now I finally understand why it took so long for Tanaan to get released. Check out that bar. So, as it stands right now in 6.2, obtaining and upgrading APEXIS gear is slightly better than before. And I mean slightly in the strictest sense of the word. I still think the gear is far too overpriced. Blizzard also locked flight behind APEXIS dailies, and they're offering a collector's edition mount reskin that tons of players seem to find appealing. But again, making the rewards more rewarding isn't a satisfactory solution. Blizzard basically slathered lipstick on a pig. Let's say I go to a restaurant and I order a steak. To my surprise, the waiter serves me a plate full of shit. I try my best to swallow it, because I paid good money for it, but ultimately, I can't stomach it. It's vile. Eating shit sucks. So I complain to the waiter. I say, hey, what gives, man? I ordered steak, not shit. So, do you think you could maybe go back in the kitchen and try and find some steak? Preferably like the kind you hyped in the menu? The waiter quietly takes my plate and disappears into the kitchen. 7.5 months later, he returns to my table with the same exact plate of shit. Only now it's smothered in condiments. Ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, anything the chef could find to try and disguise the taste. At this point, I'm pissed, and I don't see how anyone could blame me. I barge into the kitchen and yell at the chef. I say, hey, this meal you prepared is terrible. You need to reassess your recipe for steak, because this shit isn't cutting it. The chef says, I'm sorry, but cooking a good steak takes time and effort, and unfortunately this restaurant's no longer interested in pursuing those goals. So if you still want to eat here, you'll have to make do with whatever meals I can pull out of my ass. This scenario is how I feel about APEXIS dailies, and WoD in general. I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but I really want to make sure I'm getting my point across. Blizzard didn't even attempt to assess the real problem here, let alone fix it. Why don't APEXIS dailies work? That's a really important question. I've heard some players say there's no actual difference between normal dailies and APEXIS dailies, and I'll admit, on the surface that might seem true, but this short-sighted observation couldn't be more wrong. Let's imagine if Volmar offered proper dailies. On Monday, 3 daily quest givers asked me to kill 20 orcs, burn 20 blueprints, and destroy 20 tanks. Once these quests are in my log, I head to the questing zone. Now there's actual planning I need to do. I have to find my objectives, because they're clear-cut and precise. I have to be quick and on my toes, because if I'm not focusing on the task at hand, other players might beat me to the punch, and searching for specific targets to kill or destroy usually requires me to delve deep into the questing area, which inevitably puts me in more danger. On the flip side, APEXIS dailies just require you to fill a bar. Every action you take contributes to that goal, no matter what you do. I could stay on the outskirts of an APEXIS zone and safely pull one enemy at a time if I wanted. If another player beats me to an enemy, it doesn't matter whatsoever. I'll just turn around and attack anything else. If I see a blueprint that can be burned, but it's surrounded by tons of enemies, I can easily ignore those blueprints. It's not mandatory that I burn them, because points are points. I'll go someplace else where the mobs are thinner. I'll take the path of least resistance every time. Also, supplying players with proper dailies gives Blizzard an opportunity to rotate them daily. Monday, I'm asked to kill 20 orcs. Tuesday, I might not get the same orc quest. I might be asked to steal 20 supply crates instead. Variety is insanely important to the longevity of player retention. APEXIS dailies never change. You fill the same bar every day. But again, Blizzard designed Tanaan with APEXIS dailies in mind. There wasn't enough time to drastically change that game plan before launch. So if I'm management at Blizzard Entertainment, and since this is all make-believe, let's pretend I still care about quality, I'm now asking myself, how can we escape the rut we're stuck in? Well, for starters, I'd make the interactable objects within APEXIS zones more dynamic. Get rid of this single-click and done bullshit. I click a set of blueprints, it burns. I click on a corpse, it burns. I click on an Arakoa scroll, it burns. This is so lazy, and it's just more proof that Blizzard phoned in this entire expansion. There's one good thing in all the new APEXIS areas that's actually worthwhile. You can jump into some stationary turrets at the Iron Docks and turn them against the Iron Horde. When I found that out, I nearly had a fucking heart attack. This is more along the lines of what I expected. Only, even these guns are pretty crappy because ammo's hard to find, and when you do manage to find some, it doesn't last long. We should be stealing Iron Horde tanks and using them to mow down enemy troops. Remember that daily quest in Pandaria that had us rolling down the Great Wall like Sonic the Hedgehog? That was fun. How about applying that same mechanic to remote control Iron Stars? We could drive them into enemy camps on a daily basis. Hell, we actually did something like that in a non-repeatable quest in Talador. It wouldn't have been that hard to copy and paste that coding into Tanaan. Most of the Tanaan jungle map is taken up by APEXIS daily grinding areas. The other locations are either dead space, friendly hubs, or Sabron lands. The longevity of this content mainly rests upon APEXIS dailies. And a barely functional stationary turret is as good as it gets? Wow. That's it. Warcraft's dead. The creative minds behind this game have officially declared mental bankruptcy. What if we were asked to steal Iron Horde blueprints in order to learn how to construct military drones? This achievement can unlock drone dailies, where we'd fly our new weaponry into Iron Horde camps to either kill enemies or hijack supplies. We could grab the supply crates with retractable claws, like those crane machine games you often see in arcades. I'm just throwing random ideas at the wall here, because no one else is. Blizzard said the selfie cam was a project made by a couple of overambitious employees. The new cat cuddling animations are probably more of the same. Where the fuck is the A-team? Are any employees actually working on the core game? Maybe I'll save that subject for a future video. Wild speculations and tinfoil hat conspiracy theories on what I think is really going on behind the scenes at Blizzard Entertainment. Anyway, I'm finally finished with my review of Tanaan Jungle. Like I mentioned before, I could have stretched it out even further, but there's no point. I didn't start making Warcraft videos to complain about the game. In fact, my first videos of WoD were quite positive. People seem to overlook that when they criticize me for being so negative. I fully expected to enjoy this expansion, and I foolishly held out for far longer than I should have, hoping I'd see things get better. But the World of Warcraft I know is gone, and I don't think it's possible that Blizzard could ever win me back. I'll continue to keep this channel alive in some form or another. I'll probably share my opinions on other MMOs, giving people my thoughts on alternatives to WoW. I'll probably even give my opinions on future WoW news, if I find any of it worth talking about. But my personal time in Azeroth and Draenor has officially come to an end. In a final farewell, I'm parking my characters in the locations I feel they fit best. to live out their digital existences in peaceful retirement until the day Blizzard decides to pull the server plugs. Thanks for watching, and hey, if you have any suggestions for future videos, let me know. I'm always open to viewer suggestions. Just leave them in the comments section below. Talk to you later.